Hello, fellow ag nerd. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Future of Agriculture podcast. My name is Tim Hammerich, and if you're curious about where innovative ideas meet practical realities in food production, I think you found the right show, and I'm sure glad you're here. We've talked about automation in this industry for as long as I've been around, and to me, it really does feel like we're starting to go from talking about something that might happen in the distant future, maybe, to actually seeing some real commercial applications of robotics on the farm. Now, it's a big difference between going to a farm show and seeing something cool and actually seeing it being purchased and utilized on a farm. Now, this transition is not a quick one, obviously, and it's not going to happen overnight, but I do think it's a defining trend that we're living through right now in today's agriculture. We have on the show today another great example of this in GUSS automation. GUSS stands for Global Unmanned Spray System, and joining me for today's episode is COO Gary Thompson. As the name sort of implies, GUSS sells fully autonomous sprayers for use in orchards and vineyards, which is really interesting because in crops like that, no piece of equipment goes through those operations more than a sprayer does. So the savings and efficiencies you're about to hear about are pretty compelling. Gary's going to share about their interesting story of how this technology was developed out of their traditional custom spraying business, how they've grown without outside capital to start selling these machines, the value and the benefits of them for farmers and other custom sprayers, and what these capabilities mean for the future of agriculture. GUSS actually came up on another podcast I host called the Almond Journey podcast. So for any of those of you interested in almonds specifically as a crop, I highly recommend you subscribing to that one as well. It's a little shorter than this one with a little bit of a different feel, and of course it's focused specifically on almonds. Anyway, I was talking to a grower on that podcast about his low-dust harvest equipment, but he made the point of talking about how happy he was with these autonomous sprayers he was purchasing from GUSS. And whenever I hear unsolicited testimonials like that, it always catches my attention for future guests of this podcast. GUSS is based in Kingsburg, California, not really that far away from Pixley, where Calgren Dairy Fuels is located that you heard about in last week's episode. In fact, next week's guest is also based in the Central Valley of California, so you're getting a little bit of a California mini-series here, I guess, by accident. Anyway, I digress. Gary Thompson, who's on the show today from GUSS, grew up on a dairy farm in Arizona and went to Cal Poly, where he met a lot of people from the Central Valley of California. It was there he got connected with GUSS, where he now oversees all daily operations, and that includes manufacturing, sales, marketing, finances, dealers, and customer relations. I asked if he'd maybe start our conversation off with a brief explanation of why spraying orchards is definitely not the same thing as spraying other crops, like row crops.
So spraying orchards is incredibly tedious. So essentially you're constrained to very small widths. So most of the trees are planted on roughly a 22 foot row in that range. So given that the trees are there, you're not able to stick 138 foot booms out and cover a bunch of ground. So you're essentially driving the field every 20 feet, more or less. The other constraint there is the speed that you have to drive. You have to go very slow to ensure that you're getting good coverage up high into the tree canopy. So 2 miles an hour is very, very common in the tree spraying business. You're just trying to allow that sprayer enough time to really coat the leaves and give the fan on the sprayer, it's basically an air blast sprayer, a big fan on the back, give it a lot of time to create turbulence up in the leaves, to flip the leaves back and forth, which gives the spray time to coat the leaves as you're going through there. So very tedious task as compared to row crop spraying. And typically what you're going to do is you're going to have a lot of equipment in a small area. So common for us in our business to have, 8 sprayers maybe in one 160 acre almond field, for example. So a lot of equipment in a very small amount of area.
And obviously almonds are a huge crop in California and one that you're very well suited for. In fact, Brett Sill down there, I interviewed him for the Almond podcast, and he was talking about his GUSS sprayers and how he wished he would have bought more. But what other crops are you already in and or looking at expanding into with this technology?
Yeah, so I know Brett well. He's a great customer of ours, and we hope to be selling him many more sprayers as well. As far as other crops, the biggest thing on the horizon for us is we're coming out with a smaller version of our machine. We call it Mini GUSS, and it's probably since we started with GUSS a few years ago, the number one question we always get is, "Oh, that's great. When are you going to develop something I can run in my vineyard? Something smaller." So we've developed that. We're going to be bringing it to market here very shortly. Vineyards can be a big crop for us, as well as high density orchards. So, like for example, up in Washington, Oregon, a lot of apples are grown high density, so on trellis, on 10-foot rows, and very high spraying demand for those crops. Some of them being sprayed 25, 30 plus times per year. And then more recently, we've really been talking with a lot of blueberry growers as well. Again, in high demand for spraying, so that machine would fit nicely in blueberries as well.
Man, this is cool stuff. Well, you guys have a great origin story, right? You didn't start off as how can we create a robot? You started off as how can we spray better, right? So talk about the origin of the company. What question was being asked that eventually led to GUSS?
Yeah, sure. So we do have a pretty unique story as far as an autonomous company goes. So our background of our company goes back about 40 years. Dave Crinklaw, he's the founder of the business. He started a commercial spraying outfit here in California back in 1982. And it was just him and his father at the time, and each of them had a tractor and each had a sprayer, and they'd go out and spray 20 or 40 acres a day and just really work their tails off to grow business. And Dave kind of soon realized that in order to really make a profitable business out of this, that he needed to eventually get off the tractor. So he started hiring more help and buying more equipment and expanding that business. So Bob eventually retired out, and Dave just kind of took it and ran with it and really started picking up some big accounts. So being in that business as long as he has, he grew it very large. Currently the largest ground tree and vine spray outfit in California. And, about 130 spray rigs total. A lot of employees obviously come along with that. And labor just really, really started taking its toll. The challenges there with the labor on the company. Essentially, it got to the point where Dave kind of was at a crossroads. He thought, well, nothing's really getting better in this regard. So should I either kind of set up a plan to get out of this business, or should we innovate and do something about it? He had this idea about a driverless sprayer for quite some time. And in 2014, he finally decided to start building it. And really at the time had zero clue how he was going to automate it. And all he kept being told over and over by anyone he'd ask is, "Oh, it can't be done in orchards because of the GPS problem. You get under the trees, GPS goes away, and how are you going to make an autonomous machine without GPS?" Well, Dave didn't take too well to that answer, so he decided, you know what? I got to build a machine. I got to start with a platform. That's his bread and butter. He knows how to build a high quality piece of equipment, so he just started building the platform, and then set off on the course of about a 3.5 year process of figuring out how to make it drive down a row, make a turn, and come back to him. So that's our background. When we first got the machine actually drivable in 2017-ish, just literally able to drive down a row, come back to us without going off course, without hitting a tree. At that point, we started calling our customers in that business and said, "Hey, look, you guys have probably caught wind of what we've been working on the last few years. Well, we're ready to come out and actually do commercial spraying with it. And we're hoping we can come to our next application on your farm with it." And overwhelmingly, the growers were like, "Yes, bring it out. We want this. Ag needs this. We're happy to have it on our farm." So that was a huge turning point for us because, first off, it was the first time we were actually getting paid for all of our R&D and our work that we had been doing the last few years. So we were taking it out on real jobs, doing real applications with it, and really just fine-tuning the product, improving the user interface, just debugging. And we just hit it really hard for a couple years there. So About that time, we really were getting a lot of attention from farmers, as you could imagine. And a lot of the farmers are saying, man, this is great. This is awesome what you guys have done. But I really don't like to hire services on my farm. I like to own my own equipment. I like to be in control of everything I do. Just sell me some of them. And that wasn't what we were doing. We created this machine to solve our own challenge, but it really got us thinking about, what? Maybe this is something we ought to take to the market and really allow other farmers to experience the benefits of this machine. So that's what we did. 2019, we built a new building to manufacture out of and made our first delivery to a customer in December of 2019.
Sure. So has the company been self-funded then? Did the spray service fund GUSS?
Yeah, so we've been entirely self-funded. There's no venture capital money. It's basically just been funded through the owners. And as soon as we started manufacturing, we spun off a new entity we call GUSS Automation LLC. And that's when the official split happened from the commercial spraying business. And really, very fortunate the way that we set it up. We started building machines, started generating revenue, and we're able to turn a profit year one with that business. So been very beneficial to us, been a big part of our success is that from day one, we could make our own decisions. When we make decisions, it's Dave, myself, and Chase, our chief technology officer. We sit around the table and we move quickly. We make decisions fast. We early on never had to go to the board and say, hey guys, we're thinking about this. And then we, have 6 meetings about it before we actually take action. So been very helpful for us.
Yeah. And how many of the sprayers today of the commercial spraying service are GUSS sprayers?
So currently we've got 13 in that company, and there's about 40 air blast sprayers that do the identical job as the GUSSes do. On top of those 13 that are conventional air blast sprayers. So we built the first 10 and really started hitting it hard with those machines. And then the 11th machine was built for a customer. At that point, we started building one a week, and we did 52 deliveries that first year to customers. So we really just focused on customer deliveries. This year, we're sprinkling in a few more builds for our own business to just kind of keep phasing things towards that direction. But obviously, we still have a high value on building for customers and really getting those machines out as well.
Sure. Yeah, and it sounds like there's still more demand out there to be met for sure. What is the average amount of acres that a grower would have that'd be a good customer for GUSS? And how many of the units are they wanting to buy for that acreage?
Sure. So to answer that question, it always depends on the crop, but let's just say almonds, for example. Typically, we recommend one sprayer per 500 acres that the grower has. That's a very common rule of thumb. Other crops that have a much higher, spray need, you're going to have to do one sprayer per, a lot less acreage than that.
And if I own 500 acres and I just think these GUSSes are so cool and I want one, but I'm only going to want one, and I'm still going to need to have somebody out there sort of monitoring it. Is there still a value proposition there? Because it's not really a labor savings. It's still the same person, although it's a much more enjoyable job, I think you would probably argue. Are there other, sort of value propositions for someone in that situation to still go GUSS's route?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there is a lot of value to that. And we've had customers that really prove that to us. It's kind of funny you ask, because early on in our development, that's what everyone coming to us told us. That, oh, well, this doesn't make sense for the small guy. This is just for the big guys. And honestly, when we started this, that's kind of who we thought we'd be selling machines to the big farmers, to the medium-sized farmers, that it wouldn't really be the smaller farmers. However, I had my first customer who came in and bought one sprayer. He changed that mindset for us almost overnight. And, I said, really? Okay, you're going to buy one, huh? And he says, yep. He says, here's my problem, Gary. He said, I'm doing all the spraying right now. He's an owner operator. And he said, I spray, and it's all night work. And then when I run out, I drive my sprayer over to the pump, and I have to get off my tractor. I have to fill the materials myself. He said, no matter how hard I'm pushing it, and I push hard, he said, it takes me 45 minutes. From the time I leave, the spray turns off, I leave the field, I go over to the pump, I mix, and then I get back to the field. 45 minutes. He said, what I'm going to do, I'm going to have my pickup, I'm going to put the laptop computer in it where I can monitor GUSS, and I'm going to pull a bubble trailer. And while GUSS is spraying, I'm going to drive over to the pump, I'm going to mix my material into that bubble trailer. I'll be able to monitor that one machine pretty easily. It's just one sprayer. I drive back to the field and I wait for GUSS to stop for its refill. So as soon as GUSS stops, it automatically will pull up on the avenue and stop. He hops out, hooks up the hose, turns the pump on, and within 3 minutes, he's hitting resume on the sprayer and it's going again. So for him, what was a 45 minutes of downtime is now taking him 3 minutes. He said, Gary, I'm doubling my acreage. Even though it's still one guy, one sprayer, I'm doing twice as much acreage every shift because of that. So, and, it's just a much more precise job and, allows him to be not just sitting on the tractor all night long.
That's a great example. Yeah, it makes a ton of sense there. And how much of a premium would he be paying for GUSS than if he was just to go to buy a conventional sprayer?
So this customer in particular, it really wasn't that big of a difference because he was using an engine drive sprayer already, which is much more costly than a PTO-driven sprayer. So really to him, it was kind of a no-brainer. He made the decision. He says, man, this isn't much more expensive capital-wise than what I'm already doing. So, but really when it comes to ROI talks, because that's probably the number one question I get asked in the sales process is, well, what's my return, if I go this route? Really, it all has to do with labor savings. That's the main thing. You're just using a lot less guys to do the spraying you need to do. Secondarily, it's efficiency. Time after time with all of our customers, with our own sprayers and our own business, the GUSSes just spray more acres than the conventional tractors. I mean, and it really all has to do with the break times. So whether it's, meal breaks, bathroom breaks, or the guys stopping to talk to each other, it's just GUSSes just tend to be a lot more efficient and just continue spraying. One of the big challenges, and going back to the comment about row crop spraying, when you're in the trees, you're spraying 100 gallons an acre, typically is your minimum. Sometimes 200 gallons, sometimes even more per acre. So having said that, you're stopping the machine every 40 minutes or so to refill it. So when you have a bunch of tractor drivers out there having to stop every 40 minutes to get a refill, it just kind of is a built-in problem of inefficiency. So they stop, hopefully it should just take 3 minutes to do the refill, but it never works that way. So GUSSes don't do that. The nurse truck driver pulls up to a GUSS, he jumps out, there's nobody to talk to, it's just a GUSS sprayer. He hooks up the hose, fills it, and 3 minutes later it's spraying again. So typically what we see efficiency-wise is 4 GUSSes are going to spray about the same acreage as 6 tractors on a typical shift. So just a lot more acres covered every day.
That's great. Do you ever run into it? This is one just hypothetical scenario I had in my mind where, a grower would say, well, I've got my crew. I need that crew for times like harvest. And the rest of the year, I keep them busy through things like spraying. And it's not necessarily labor savings because I need them to have something to do. I don't know if you ever get that pushback at all.
We do get that comment at times. And typically, start that conversation and say, okay, well, first off, it's a phase in with the GUSS, right? So year one, this outfit might have 40 sprayers or something. Year one, just start with something manageable. Start with a group of 4 GUSSes. Really, you're not even going to probably notice too big of a difference in the labor thing. You shave a couple guys and all you're going to do is reallocate them to a different part of the business, right? Because everyone's short of labor. That's just the truth of it. Most farmers are behind on work. I mean, because they're, just always short of labor. So they're like, oh, yeah, this would be great. I could use these 2 or 3 guys and move them over here. I need help on the irrigation side of the business. I need more guys to, just clean up the fields, to be on the mower or something. So usually year one, they're just kind of really reallocated. And then after they run the GUSSes for a while, they kind of reevaluate the situation and say, man, this is just such a better spray dynamic than the conventional side is. So, let's make another investment, buy more GUSS sprayers. And then it's just kind of a slow transition that way. And then just, hold on to the best guys you got, utilize them in a better way than having them sit on a tractor going 2 miles an hour all the time. And, really just realizing those efficiencies, because spraying, there's a busy season of spraying, but in reality, it's year round, and that harvest time is typically let's say a month to 2 month process. So to just have a whole bunch of extra guys around, all year long for 1 to 2 months might not be the best route to go. And typically they're having to hire in more guys anyways during the harvest season. So, it's kind of like, well, what's another handful of guys that we got to hire during those 2 months and then utilize them and then, go back to our regular crew.
Right. Well, it would seem like a prime customer for GUSS would be other custom sprayers, which in a way is a little bit of the competition of the parent company of GUSS. Has that happened yet? And if so, do you see that being a possible market for you all?
Yeah, the first customers we picked up were custom sprayers. I mean, when they found out we were actually going to start selling our machines, they were just besides themselves because that's their everyday life. When you're on a farm, spraying isn't the everyday life. It's a huge part of your life, but it's not, day in, day out, every single day. So the commercial guys really came to us quick. And it was a touchy situation, and it still is today. So when we do sell the machines to them, we say, look, let's just kind of have a gentleman's agreement here. No competition either way. Really doesn't help us to sell machines to you, and then you go take away acreage from our commercial business, and vice versa. We're not going to sell you GUSSes, and then as soon as you get rolling on your new job with your new GUSSes, then we're going to come steal your farm from you. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So it's really worked out very well so far.
Well, we have a lot of critical thinkers that listen to the podcast, and I often get skeptical questions on stuff like this, such as, well, yeah, this seems like a really cool technology, but isn't spraying on the way out, right? Chemical agriculture is going to go away. Maybe talk about that. First of all, your thoughts on, spraying orchards in general, but also what else can be used. And my understanding is, there's probably even organic products or microbial products that might work with this.
Oh yeah, exactly. And you're exactly right. There's a common misconception out there that organic crops aren't sprayed, and that's not true in a lot of cases. And in a lot of cases, they're actually sprayed more often than conventional crops because you're using products that have lower efficacy. So you have to get in and continue spraying more frequently just because those products honestly just don't work as well at controlling the pests that you're after or whatever you're trying to do with that product. So whether it is organic or conventional farming, everyone needs sprayers. That's not going to change. And then as far as your other question on my thoughts on it, I think that there's a market for both, and we got to, as farmers, meet consumer needs. We obviously in our business think that there's a lot of good to the technology that's gone into agriculture in the last 50 plus years, and the products that we're applying to the trees, obviously taking every safety precaution necessary to make sure that the consumer's getting the best high value product that they can get. But just all the advancements that we've made as the agricultural community and getting just high yields out of our crops, lowering the carbon footprint of the farm, just doing more with less. And very, very easy to do when you have all these materials at your disposal. You can really push those limits. So taking all that away definitely changes the game there. But it's good to have a product for all consumers.
Okay. And where does precision enter the picture for GUSS? Because it seems like the idea here is to really fully cover the tree with what you're spraying. In fact, you don't want to leave, any spots that don't get the application. Is that true, or is there some sort of precision attachments that you can put on this and kind of spot spray with it?
Sure. So just starting out with the precision talk, GUSS is very, very precise. In the regards of precision, mainly has to do with the speed of the vehicle. So again, to spray trees effectively, you have to go at a very slow rate. So 2 miles an hour is what most of your PCAs are going to suggest. Trying to get a bunch of tractor drivers to do 2 miles an hour all night long when they're spraying is very, very challenging, as any grower will tell you. And honestly, driving 2 miles an hour all day long is kind of torture. It's very slow and tedious. So having said that, GUSS doesn't mind. You set the computer on GUSS to do 2 miles an hour, and it'll do 2 miles an hour all day, all night. It really doesn't mind at all. So then you're just getting a much more precise spray because it's being applied the way that it was directed to be applied. Also, the areas where GUSS turns the spray on and off, like for example, when it's spraying in an orchard or a vineyard and it goes to make a turn on the avenue and get back into the next row, the spray turns off when you make the turn, and then it turns back on as it re-enters the crop. That point where the spray turns off and back on is extremely precise on GUSS. And so you can have 8 sprayers out in one field, and every one of them is going to turn the spray on and off at the exact correct location. Very, very tough to do with tractor drivers. One of them might be pretty good at it and coating the whole tree and not anything extra, but trying to get 8 of them all aligned to do that is definitely very challenging. And then you just talk about the flow rate of the material you're putting out there. A lot of these sprays are 100 gallons per acre, so you want to maintain that the whole time you're spraying, the pump pressure, all that. So it's all computer controlled. It's all being monitored full time. So if any one of those parameters gets off, it's going to send an alert. It's going to notify the guy that's supervising the machines, and he can take action. And on to your next question about the sensors, we do have a product called Select Spray that we add to the machine if a customer requests it. There's a couple markets for this. And essentially what it is the sensors on the machine that see the crop and turn the nozzles on and spray it. So first off, young trees, very, very beneficial to use Select Spray in the young trees because it's going to see that baby tree, turn the spray on, and then turn the spray off for the gap in between the trees. Save a lot of chemicals, very cost effective. Second big market for this Select Spray is Florida. So we spray citrus over there, our customers do. And with all the citrus psyllid, the greening issues over there, any mature grove in Florida is infected to some degree by greening. So you got a very large tree next to a tree that died maybe last year and was reset with a baby tree, next to a tree that was reset 2 or 3 years ago, which is a medium size. So we actually use 3 sensors per side on that machine. If it sees a small tree with the bottom sensor, it just turns on the bottom third of the manifold. 2 sensors for a medium tree will turn on 2/3 of the manifold, and then a mature tree, it'll turn on the whole side of the manifold. So we do utilize some of these sensors for select customers.
I imagine you got this diesel engine in there because it takes quite a bit of power to cover a big tree with spray. For the mini GUSS, did you all look at electric, or is it going to be diesel as well? Or is that even feasible that something like this could be electric in the future?
So the main horsepower requirement on GUSS is the fan. So it's got a 36-inch fan. It's an engine-driven fan off the back of that Cummins motor. That fan alone is going to use about 100 horsepower continuously to blow that spray way up high into the trees. The rest of the horsepower, about roughly 20 to 30 horse is going just to driving the vehicle. It is a hydrostatic-driven vehicle. And then we have some excess horsepower in there in case there's a hill climb or you get into a mud situation or something like that. So given that high horsepower demand of the fan, very, very challenging to make that vehicle electric today. We've done the calculations. We'd probably get about a 3-hour runtime before it had to be recharged. And that's just honestly something that we're not going to build because no farmer is going to want to go spray for 3 hours and then have to go recharge it at this point. So having said that, what our plans are and what we're actively working on is instead of doing a foliar air blast sprayer electric is doing an herbicide machine electric. So we're building an herbicide sprayer right now, building the prototype, and that one doesn't have the fan on it because we're just spraying weeds on the ground. So really, essentially all we're doing is driving the vehicle using 20, 30 horsepower and running a small herbicide pump. So with that machine, we've calced it out and we figure we can get around a 10 to 12 hour runtime on the batteries. And that's a viable product. That's something that our customers are asking us for. First off, the herbicide side of things, and secondly, the electrification side of things. So that's where we're going to take our first plunge into the electric side, really get to understand and know the systems. And then hopefully in the future, as battery technology improves and the recharging technologies and the infrastructure on farms for the recharging, then we'll take another look at doing the air blast sprayer with it.
Right to repair is a big topic right now of the machinery companies. And whenever I see high tech equipment like this, I wonder about, are we just continuing on this trend of making it more difficult for farmers to sort of problem solve on their own? How are you handling this? And is this something where there still is equipment that it can easily be serviceable by the farmer themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we probably are on the other end of that spectrum, I'd say. We spend a tremendous amount of time developing good manuals for our machines, both the operating manuals, the safety manuals, and service manuals. And we're kind of almost a wide open book about how to work on our machines. And our manuals are very detailed, not only on changing parts and servicing things, but also just diagnosing problems. I'm aware of all the controversy with right to repair and all that, and I always question myself whether we're doing it the wrong way, because I feel like we're a fairly open book. Now, having said that, the driving software, stuff like that, is not something, for obvious reasons that we would just allow customers to get in and start tweaking and making changes to the source code, so to say, mostly just because it could create a lot of problems, as you could imagine. But as far as the rest of the machine, it's really a pretty simple machine. We always kind of joke about that it's the most simple autonomous machine on earth. It's very easy to work on. That's a number one priority for us when we build a piece of equipment. Just given our background, we're out there spraying all night long. And if it goes down at 2 a.m., we want to be able to fix it fast and get it going again. So we make that very, very simple for growers.
Cool. By farmers, for farmers. Well, this has been great, Gary. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think we got to the majority of my questions here. Anything that you were either hoping to mention that we didn't touch on or that you wanted to, clarify or go deeper on?
No, we're just very excited about the future. Our Orchard GUSS machine is just kind of the start for us, and we created a product that's been extremely helpful for growers. And yeah, we're right about the 100th sprayer delivered right now, actually. So just really getting them out there. We're going to be expanding up into the Pacific Northwest here very shortly. Excited to do that. And just continuing to look to the future and the more fun and innovating things that we can do.
Well, big thank you to Gary Thompson for joining me on today's show. If you haven't seen the videos of GUSS in action, you really need to do that. Gary does a great job of posting them on LinkedIn, where I follow him, and you might want to follow him there. I'll also link to their website, which got a great video introducing their new mini GUSS on the homepage. I want to give a special shout out to a couple of listeners here, Brian Hogue and Dennis Devitt. Both of them recommended Gary for the show and helped to facilitate the connection. And thank you to all of you who continue to listen. I'd never take it for granted. I'll be back next week with another story of ag innovation.